if you constantly, if the horse feels something constantly that he can lean into or push against or pull from, he will, because it's constant. And that's not the way nature works. You know, nature is vibrating, it has pulses and movement, and you want to replicate that, you know, in your hands with riding. So although I've got two reins, it's not to stop him, because I mean, I want to make him go, not stop him, but you do have to bring him back down sometimes a gear, or ask him to stop like this. And I won't give a tug, I'll move my hands around. Now he wants to itch, well that's alright, but then he likes to walk forward. So we've just started to learn back, and back, and back, and back, and back. Because when you ask them to go back, it brings them off the forehand. They can't go into reverse on the forehand. And so there's a lot of movement with my hands to stop him going dead. Now walking on again, good boy. Yeah, so we just started to learn back. It's not by no means perfect. And as I ask for it, as soon as he gives me a step back, I soften the pressure. And if I ask him to stand, the moment he goes to stand, I soften the pressure. There's no pressure on him at all. And then he learns the cue. Now walking on again. Because if I asked him to stop and I kept the same pressure on when he was stopped as I've used to create the stop, well, if you think about it, how confusing is that? How very confusing. You know, you've asked the horse to stop, but the horse has stopped, but to him you're still asking for him to stop. So he thinks, well, obviously I haven't got that right, so I'll decide to walk on, since that must be, I mustn't have got that right. She mustn't have asked for the stop, she must have asked for something else, so I'll walk on. So then there's more pressure because they've tried to walk on, and instead of less, and so the horse just gets more and more confused. Well, there's somebody going for a ride. She's going the same way as us. I really don't want to, because I want to keep talking, I don't want to ride with her. But this is a good test for Ronan. So you can see that horse, and he has walked back with that horse before. So he probably thinks, but he's really not competitive. Good boy, and you're listening to me. I'm walking on. So what happens to the horse is they end up what's called walking through the bridle, where you're using the reins, but the horse just ploughs on regardless. And that was Ronan. Come on. So we don't want to go with that horse. Come on. Thank you. He says the landscape looks different from this side of the road. Oh, and then good boy, Ronan. There, good boy. I have to do my silly little jog because I'm a little bit nervous. So this kind of thing looks like, I don't know what it looks like from on top, but it might look quite savage, but it's actually not. What I'm doing is I'm using one rein at a time, and if he's not responding like he's wanting to look right, but I've got this left rein, I've also got my left leg here. There's a car. And this isn't something that is necessarily for the everyday person, because you do have to have tremendous feel, but otherwise, you know, I mean, if if you've been taught to use both reins and just, bring your hands back to stop, and if the horse doesn't stop, use more hand. If he doesn't stop, give a big pull. If that's how you've been taught to stop the horse, then this probably won't make any sense to you at all. But I can feel that the right hand side of his mouth, as expected, is more responsive than the left, simply because people haven't really been using the left rein much, because you walk along on this side of the road, so this is the rein you would use most. So he's happy to turn his head this way, but this way, it just like meets with this resistance. So by using now my leg is really there all the time, because you can't do this without the leg. So this is really quite soft, but this is not soft. This is really resistant, really resistant. And you see he's turning his head right. Come on, lady. Oh, do you want to come by? They are funny. Well, why sit in the middle of the road? Right. So, I'm going to bring him round now with one rein. I've let go of the other rein. And as soon as he turns his head, there's no pressure at all. I've got my leg here, there's no pressure. And he can see his mouth for the first time is, if you noticed his lips, they were moving, because if you just have a solid pull on the reins over time, but even in one ride, the horse will close its lips around the bit, and in an effort to stop the action of the reins or the bit in his mouth, because they don't like that pressure. So I think, trot on, thank you. Morning. 98% of horses have less than an ideal mouth. I'm just going past here. They have less than an ideal mouth simply because riders have no idea what they should be doing with their hands, and there's a kind of that lack of awareness translate to a lack of finesse with the hand, and so it's just sort of there, and it's not speaking to the horse, and it's kind of like a constant pressure that the horse simply wants to fight against. I mean, that's so logical. I mean, it happens on a head collar. I mean, you've got horses, we call them head collar runners, where you go to lead them in, and they simply walk through the head collar and get ahead of you and then run off. And although you're pulling on the head collar, they take no notice. Well, that's happened because, for various reasons, but you see, ultimately, when the horse is used to that pressure on its nose but still keeps doing what it was already doing, in the end he'll decide that he actually doesn't have to take any notice of it, that you don't mean what you say, that he doesn't like that constant pressure, and he can just walk all the way through. And then people start thinking of these alternative things, like there's the Julie head collar, and before that, which is more humane now, they've removed the coal studs, which sounded ghastly, but I don't think they have them anymore. We don't use Julie head collars, but I know a lot of people find them invaluable. But before they had them, they had the chiffney, which is an instrument of torture, and we've never used one. I don't know if we've got one, but just for like an example's sake to show people. But actually I think we did have one, and somebody took a liking to it and took it off with them, and that happens. But yeah, so it's the same thing, you know, that head collar running where you can no longer control the horse in a head collar, you know, and it gets to a point where you can no longer control. I mean, Ronan was barely controllable in his mouth, but because he wasn't going anywhere, it didn't make a difference. So I want to show him that I'm connecting with him, I'm communicating with him through the reins. Here we go again. No, he's got no corners to his mouth either. That's it. Just one rein. As soon as he comes round, I let it go. There's nothing on this side. My leg is on. I'm tapping his side so that he has to start listening. Can you see his lips? He's listening. Now what I want him to do, and this is hard for him because his muscles probably do not bend this way, or haven't for a long time. I want his head to stay round to the left on its own, which it is. Good boy. That is very good. Very good. Very good. Now he can walk on. So when he riding him like that, doing this sort of thing, now look how soft he is. I've got a little bend here, not very much, but you know, he's really soft. And then if I go and ask him to stop, he stops well anyway, but my point is that there's no contact because I've asked him to stop. There's no contact, so you know, that makes him happy because he thinks, oh, I've got that right, and there is nothing to walk through. You can't walk through nothing. But if I was to ask him to stop and I kept the pressure on, well, what tends to happen, and you know, many horses do this, they feel the pressure and they just walk forward into it. Well, that won't happen if there's no pressure to walk in. And if you feel him, he wants to itch. See, it's another, again, you have to know the horse to know what that sort of pull on the reins means. But he mustn't walk forward, so I'm doing this, so there's nothing to pull against. And he does like to have an old head scratch, and it could be that that wasn't permitted either. Right, now do one little rein back, and again it's back. Good boy. And the more he goes to pull on me back, the more I let go. And back, and back. Good boy. So again, there's no pressure, and he goes to pull on me because he is very used to yanking the rider's hand forward, so now he wants to pull on me, so we'll do something different like this. It's not his fault. He's doing the best he can. He thinks he's going to be pulled on. Good boy. Now, and that, he was pulling on me, so back up, back. Now, that's his favourite trick, to just pull right down to the ground in an effort to relieve himself of the pressure. So, rather than have a battle with him, because, you know, a horse he's got a big strong neck, And you know, even a man isn't stronger than a horse's neck and head. I mean, I can't think how many stone a horse's head weighs, but it's, you know, good. Now he's standing, and I can feel him mouthing the bit, so that's excellent. Good boy. I'm walking on. So, in order not to get into a pulling battle, one has to think sideways through a problem, and then, you know, as Einstein said, oh gosh, I'm hopeless at quotes, but anyway, I'm going to have a go. His, what's the word? Interpretation of insanity is to keep on, in order to find a solution, you keep on doing things the same way as that created the problem in the first place, and by doing that expecting to have a different outcome. So I'm not saying we're all insane, but if pulling on the reins has created the problem, then pulling on the reins to find a solution to that problem, you're using the same kind of technique and thinking that created the problem in the first place. So clearly you need to think sideways. And if horses don't have that pressure on their mouth, they very soon stop pulling through everything. And it's the same with the head collar, which, yeah, we'll talk about that at some point, or even have an example.